I remember that I was sitting in a circle. This was in kindergarten. I must have been, I don't know, between the ages of 3 and 5, somewhere there. And we were sitting in a circle and the teacher was explaining something about people in other countries. And I remember she pointed at me and she said, and in some countries, people have black hair like Zozan. And I kind of looked around the room and for the first time I realized, oh, I'm the only person with dark hair in the room.
Everyone was brunette, blonde.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, I was kind of confused because, I was pointed out as someone from another country. I was born and raised in Germany and my parents are immigrants. So in my family, we spoke 3 languages when I grew up. And of course, I thought, like growing up, I thought this was perfectly normal. I didn't think we were any way different or weird or anything like that. And, and then you enter primary school or kindergarten and you for the first time, if you are sort of an ethnic kid, you are in a room with the dominant culture. And all of a sudden you realize, so I noticed little things at first. Oh, everybody speaks German at home with their parents. And, we speak other languages. I was pointed out by teachers as different. And so I went home and I asked my Mom, are we not German? And she's like, of course not. Oh. And it was just like, this is absolutely new to me. And so I remember then that same day, I was like, Barbie dolls, like, back in the 80s.
All of them were blonde.
All of them were blonde. And so I was like playing with one and I said to my sister, who's 8 years older, she was in the room with me. And I said to her, I wish my hair was blonde. And my sister just looked at me like she had been through this before. And she's like, I know,
really?
Me too.
Wow.
And it was just like that realization slowly, and then it wasn't like a malicious thing. Like the teacher wasn't doing this, she was probably celebrating diversity, but it's like for you personally, it becomes like the beginning of a very long and difficult journey to like that not belonging.
When I was 8 years old, it was a dream to be blonde and blue eyes. Like that's always a stereotype. And I can't recall where that started. It's amazing that, of course, you can recall that moment. For me, I don't know where it comes from. It could be cinema, could be whatever, the stereotype. But what was that journey like from that confusion moment, of course, into probably experiencing more of you have such a beautiful mix of backgrounds and culture that I can imagine that's not really, maybe the word is not accepted. I think the word I'm looking for, what would you say the word is? As understood as?
Yeah, it's considered unusual when it really isn't, actually. If you think about it, we talked about this, like people have always had legs. People have always walked across borders. So probably all of us are mixed anyway. But I think, in my case, it was because there's 2 very big cultures. In my family, we're Turkish, we're Italian, and obviously born in Germany. So you have those 3 very big European cultures.
Yeah.
And especially, although it's controversial to say Turkish is a European culture, I apologize. But, especially in Europe, it's, you're defined by the nation state, and the nation state is defined by what you're not. You cannot be German and also be something else. No. It's not how we conceptualize nationality, right? So it comes a little bit from that. And so, and you have like these very large ideas and sort of macro level understandings of nationality. And then it impacts this kindergarten kid, sitting on the floor and worrying about her hair. And so, it started off like in my personal journey, it started off as firstly this becoming like this realization that I'm other, this becoming the other. And that was immediately difficult for me and as it would be for anybody else, because when you are a kid, but when you are anyone, even as an adult, you just want to belong because we are social animals.
Yeah.
We need community. We need to be part of a group. Yeah. And so when you're constantly not part of the group because there's something that isn't even anything you can influence, right? No. I cannot influence my ethnicity. So, what can I do? So it becomes then this struggle to how can I fit in? What can I give up? What is it that disturbs you that I can rid myself of so that I'm allowed to be in this group with you? And so one of the ways I can now, as an adult, observe looking back was language. So, becoming, okay, everyone here speaks German and only German. So maybe if I do that as well, and I pretend I don't speak another language, or I pretend I don't understand, or in my family, we also just speak German. Maybe that makes me more palatable to them. Like, hey, I'm like you. Wow. And so, you use, and people do all sorts of things, then people will dye their hair, people will bleach their skin, whatever it is to fit in.
Yeah.
So it becomes, especially when you enter those teenage years, it becomes like a really big battle.
Of course.
And you think there's something wrong with you.
100%. And I felt that all the way through. So that led you, I guess that trauma has led you to what you do now. And
what choice did I have?
Trauma chooses your path, I think. That's my belief. But now that you're at this stage, I think you've dedicated most of your academic life to this big topic.
Yeah.
And I know that you've written a book, and I'd love to touch a little bit more on, because for me, the book that you wrote, which I'd love to see, it's very relatable and global to a lot of people. It tackles a lot of topics that are taboo and that people have been accepting for a while. So tell me about that moment of where you thought, okay, this is the book that I want to write, and this is the issue that I want to go for.
Yeah, it's a little bit, I already kind of touched on it. For me, language is very important because, again, in my family, we are very multilingual. And I just noticed, when I was a kid, I was speaking all the languages fluently. So I was speaking Turkish, I was speaking Italian, I was speaking German. And then fast forward to becoming a young adult, and all of a sudden, I no longer speak Turkish, but I'm fluent in English. What happened? And I just wanted to know what happened. And so that sort of when I began the journey of understanding, because language represents something. Language is like an audible marker of identity, right? It's something you can kind of see and hear. And so if someone sort of gives one up, isn't that like sort of an insight into what's happening on the inside, right? And why is it that you wanted to give that up? And so in Germany, in the context where I grew up, being Turkish is at the time, was the most awful thing you could be. So it was the biggest migrant group at the time. And so, there was a lot of discrimination, and I can understand how I wanted to distance myself from that. And so I wanted to know, does it happen to other people?
Yeah.
And so, I did my research here in Australia and with other kinds of ethnicities and cultural groups. And it is a very universal experience. It has something to do with the dominant culture and how much value your heritage culture has in that environment. So, we consider some cultures and languages superior to others.
You do.
Even though they are, let's say, linguistically the same, they're equally beautiful, socially they don't rank in the same way.
No.
And so you internalize that.
Of course. And that was your experiment in the book. So you discussed and you kind of conducted interviews with young, trilingual speaking, 18 to 35 years old. What was your learning from that? What was the unseen that you saw, and the common denominator, of course, between all of them?
Yeah, it is. Firstly, it's a very painful process. Yeah. So as you become aware, because you're giving up who you are, you're giving up part of who you are in order to fit in. And also you're navigating several worlds in which you are inadequate. Like, you are inadequate in all of them. So, if you think of like your heritage community, if you are born and raised in Australia, for example, you cannot possibly be exactly like your migrant parents who grew up in a completely different country. You can relate to it, but you are not the same because you grew up somewhere else. You have that influence, and you have to, because you have to assimilate to where you're living. Like, you have to speak the language.
Yeah.
You have to go with the customs of the space.
Yeah.
So you're actually disappointing your parents because you are not living up to what they want you to be.
Yes.
And at the same time, you're too brown for, white Australia. So whatever you do, you're not going to fit in just by nature of the way you walk into the room, and what your name is. And it's also this constant not belonging.
Yeah.
That's quite universal among people who have migrant parents.
I know.
And you would have an experience like that, I'm sure.
I do. And have you done 6 people or 7 people interviews? Okay. Can I be the 7th?
Sure.
Now? Okay, great. So number 1, the word assimilate, good or bad? The concept.
Yes, it's a loaded question. I don't like it.
Yeah, same.
And I think a lot of people who are in migration studies and cultural studies don't like it.
Yeah. Why?
because it means exactly that, right? It means like, oh, I need to change myself to be more similar to the dominant culture, even though the dominant culture isn't necessarily the better one, or there's nothing wrong with mine, but because I'm in this space, now I have to give up who I am to be more like them. So I don't like the word assimilate for that reason, but I also think that, you know, when we speak about diversity, we also have to, we have to also acknowledge that we need a common way to communicate and live together, right? Yeah. So it's a bit more like, I would prefer a word that speaks a bit more around how we can actually create more diverse societies where everybody gets to retain and bring everything they are. That doesn't mean you don't learn English. It means you learn English, but you are also allowed, without shame, to speak Arabic or whatever it is that you're speaking, rather than, you know, especially I think in the context of Australia, but everywhere really, Arabic has become a threatening language, right? It's almost like an aggressive language, only because it has been associated with all this Islamophobia and all of that, right? So it's become this thing where it's almost like an offense to speak it, when it isn't. It's an ancient language. It's a beautiful language. You should be speaking it as easily and as proudly as English. So I think that's what I want, rather than assimilation. But I also don't like the word multiculturalism. Can I tell you why?
Okay, let me add it to the list. Why? To me, that wasn't on my hot take, bad list. But tell me.
Because when we speak about culture, even in the sense of multiculturalism, we speak of them as pure finished things. So I speak of multiculturalism, there's Chinese culture and there's Vietnamese culture and there's French culture. But to begin with, all of them are mixed. All of them are unfinished. Yeah. All of them are changing. Yeah. What was French 20 years ago is no longer what is French today. Do you know what I mean?
Les Miserables was very different to Paris Man.
So do you know what I mean? So I don't even like that we silo the cultures and say, you know, there's a multiculture. Why can't we just let's just go of categorizing it almost.
I agree.
Like, it's a very globalized world, so shouldn't we have a globalized culture?
It's an unbelievable globalized. Every country has so many. Even within Iraq, there's so many. Within Turkey, there's so every city or village has. So let's scrap them all.
Yeah.
That's not what I was taught when I first came to here. So this is why I need your help, because I genuinely, when I came from Iraq, I was 15. And the first thing we learned in IEC, because I couldn't speak English, we go into intensive English center for people that have just migrated. And we learn about how the First Nations were assimilated to fit into this. It was a thing, right? Assimilation. And then we're kind of learning how to, I chose a new word. It was being Aussified.
Oh, Aussified.
Yeah, like Aussified, yeah. But I think in the beginning, I mean, I never questioned it. And one problem I've had, and I don't know how to tackle it, and I think a lot of people relate to it, is everyone, as you said, has come, like the group that you spoke to, from multinational background. I don't feel Iraqi enough, but I also don't feel Australian enough when I came here. So I went back to Iraq after 20 years, my home country, and I thought I can be home. And I was welcomed home, and I love my culture, but I don't feel Iraqi enough, and I don't feel Australian enough. Have you seen No Country for Old Men?
Yes.
Okay, I feel every time I watch that movie, I just like the title. Also great acting, but it feels like I belong to No Country, which I'm fine with. I'm like, okay, I'm a global citizen and whatnot. But yeah, I guess I don't know where to belong besides just being with the friends that I'm with in the family. How do I go about it? And what kind of advice would you give to those that don't know? Because they've been assimilated.
Yes.
But I haven't been assimilated.
That's right. And you will never will. You never will, because how can you?
I want to be Aussified. If I really want to be Aussified, how can I?
Change your name. Forget who you are.
Yeah. So I can't. Okay. So then what are my options?
Well, I think there's two ways. There's firstly finding safe spaces for yourself, but then there's also trying, you know, the work that I'm doing is actually, you know, it's actually quite outrageous, because I'm suggesting there's no nation and there's no culture. Like, you should.
It's a hot take.
I know.
It's beautiful.
It is, but
let's come back to it. Yeah.
I'm saying it's all mixed. What are you holding on to? Why are you so? What is the conservation angst? Yeah.
Is it fear?
I think so. It's like that. You know, you don't want things to die out, and that's great. We can preserve.
Yeah.
But we also, like, especially, again, I'm talking in the context of migration. You know, like, my parents have very nostalgic views of their homeland that are inaccurate and out of date. Yes. So firstly, we're only remembering the good things once we have left the country.
True.
And we're remembering what was the case 30 years ago.
True.
If you go there now, you will realize, oh, I remember why I left, number one.
So I felt that, and it's sad.
Yeah.
It was so sad.
So no culture is perfect, is what I'm trying to say.
It's fine, right?
And
So,
and you know, just like you know, take the best out of every culture, and it's almost like a process of evolution. You know, that's why we need diversity, right? That's why I say I should be. Let's say I'm Australian and I was born and raised here. I should be as interested in your story as someone who migrated here as you are in mine. That would be truly genuine interaction and diversity and multiculturalism, right? Rather than it is understood that I'm the dominant person because I was here first, and therefore you need to assimilate to me, right? And you should be curious about me, and I don't need to show any interest in you, because that's kind of what we're currently doing, right?
It is.
But also this idea that there is an Australian culture that is original and worth presenting. I mean, to begin with, if you're you know, if you are not a First Nations Australian, you are a migrant yourself. You come from you know, migration has touched your story.
True. Why don't people get that, right? And I think we've spoken it, right, in terms of people are born innately good, hopefully, most people, and people learn to behave.
Oh, yeah.
So where does that, I think, as you said, it's probably a bit of fear, but those that say, go back where you come from, those marches that we see where, you're right, they did migrate, or their great-grandparents have migrated. I guess, have you had a moment where you were able to communicate honestly with someone and get them to that stage? And what kind of advice would you give to me if I know someone like that I know is a good person, but doesn't have that?
I think the key is like intention, right? Do you want to actually, like, do you want to be right, or do you want to actually meaningfully engage? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's because we are living in a time, and we talked about this a bit, like people are radicalizing both ways. Like there's very little tolerance for alternative views to your own. And that is both right and left. So I think we are in an era where it is really exacerbated. Like we're very, you know, like anyone who's anti-immigration must be a diabolical person who hates everybody and murders children, which is not the case, right? You can be, in fact, a good person and maybe misunderstand some things around migration. As is the case for, you know, someone who is a migrant, I still need to respect that there are people who have long histories, family histories of living in one place, and they have attachments to that I cannot relate to, right?
Of course.
And so what is the intention then of having a conversation? Is the intent who's right? Because none of you is right and none of you is wrong. You're just coming from very different viewpoints. And the goal should be to understand the other person and connect over your common humanity. They probably love their family and you love your family. Let's start there. You know, you can see the beauty in your culture and they can see it in theirs. You know, it's more about like, let's find common ground rather than start with what divides us. And, you know, that's the thing, because I think we also like to vilify and become the victim. We like that dynamic as well.
Why? Does it feel good? Do we feel in the right?
Because, you know, if life is hard, you want to blame someone.
That's true.
And that can be, my case can be, oh, you know, my life is hard as an ethnic woman, so I'm going to blame the white man. I mean, that's the same thing as the other way around. This is what I'm trying to say, right?
And some people are like that.
That's right. Yeah. And so this is what I'm saying. We're radicalizing either way.
Yes, both sides. Yeah.
And we are also forgetting sometimes that all of us also have privilege and all of us have some disadvantage. We are not like all disadvantaged or unprivileged, right?
Yeah.
And so you also have to kind of remember that. So yes, I am yes, I am a migrant and all of that, but I'm also European. You know, I won the lottery of life. I was born there. You know, I have rights other people don't.
Yeah.
Which is wrong, but I have them. You know, and so I can be,
yeah, that's okay. You're dealt your cards, and
that's right. And so it's like, you know, let's see, what are your cards? Like, be curious. What are your cards?
Yeah.
Maybe there's something to you I don't see. Why are you so angry? You know, like, what happened to you?
Yeah.
Is another question you could ask rather than, do you know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah. So it's more, it's not about walking in there and like, I'm going to change your mind because I'm right.
100%. I love everything you're saying, and I think it's such an important dialogue to have. And if there was one paragraph from your book that you would want people to remember, what would it be?
So in my book, I speak very about things that are very personal to me as well. And so this is my favorite bit because it talks a little bit about what we talked about, that letting a part of yourself go, right? So I write, I was particularly taken aback by the notion of erasing oneself, because that is perhaps one of the best ways to put it. Today, and to my own surprise sometimes, I can barely say anything in Turkish. I say to my own surprise, because for the longest time I believed that I could still do it if I wanted to, because I remember being able to with ease. But these days it almost seems to require superhuman strength and the biggest cognitive effort to remember a simple word like spoon. I can barely form a sentence and only give one-syllable answers. My pronunciation is awful, immediately foreign. This struck me particularly because in home videos, Turkish was one of my first languages when I began speaking. Upon realizing what I had lost, it surely felt that I had erased that part of myself. Perhaps because of this, I teared up a little during my interview with Kai. So just stopping here, Kai is Australian and half Greek, half Swedish.
I know.
So I teared up a little during my interview with Kai when I heard him say this. He says, in primary school, for school assembly, they're talking about different cultures and stuff, and they go, Kai, how do you say hello in Greek? You know, singling me out. And then everyone would turn and look at me. And I remember saying, I don't know. So I asked him, but you knew? And he goes, yes, I knew. We both paused for quite a while here reflecting. And then I asked him, why do you think you said, I don't know? And he replies, because I didn't want to be different, I guess. They didn't know. So if I don't know, then I'm like them. That's my favorite part of the book.
Of course. How did you feel when you heard it?
I started crying.
Did you?
Yeah. Which is not what you're supposed to be doing when you are a researcher, but he articulated it the best, that moment of negotiation, right? Like he's describing exactly what I was describing with the, you know, in some countries, people have dark hair like Zozan, right? So you're like this moment of everyone's looking at me because something's wrong with me or I'm different. I'm sort of doing something they are not. And as a kid, that is awful, right? And so he's then asked, how do you say hello in Greek? And of course he knows. And he just starts that behavior, right? And if you pretend that you don't know, if you stop speaking, language is a practice. If you habitually self-censor yourself, you will eventually stop being able to speak. And then you become silent and you have lost that. And why did you lose it? For these social pressures, not because there was truly anything wrong with it.
And that's Raised Voices, which is a beautiful title.
Well, thank you.
And to end on a positive note, what would be your parting advice to those that resonate with that message deeply? What would you tell them to simply think of if they've been in those moments and they're still in that limbo, I guess? Because I am.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would like everyone to know, if that is your story and you know you're an adult and you're just struggling with what have I given up, or you know, I think the first thing I want to say is just it's not your fault and there's nothing wrong with you. You know, whenever you choose to not speak your language in public or to purposefully mispronounce your name to make it more anglicized or to shorten it, to make someone else more comfortable, making yourself uncomfortable, right? I would like people to sort of stop making yourself uncomfortable to make someone else comfortable.
Because we can do it unconsciously. I imagine
right.
that. And I love that advice.
Because you should be comfortable. You get to be comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sit with that discomfort for the other person.
that's right.
And that's amazing. And I think the world will be a better place with your future documentaries, books, and everything else. And I think it's a dialogue and that people just kind of speak with, whether it's with family or whether it's with your friends, and it's slowly trying to raise more awareness on this topic.
Can I ask you something?
Anything.
Because you came quite late in life
I did.
compared to,
Yes.
who I was
Yeah.
speaking to.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. What is it? Because you're kind of halfway finished when you were,
I was, as in like development of a human being.
yeah, like 15. That's like, 15, you're pretty much like,
Yeah.
you're fluent, obviously, in your mother tongue. You have all your friends. You
Yeah.
grew up with that culture. You have a good understanding of that. That's a completely different migration experience.
It is.
What was that like?
100%.
Because you're almost an adult at 15. I mean,
I know, 15, 16.
yeah.
I think when you're at that age, and I left Iraq when I was 8, and I lived across Syria and Jordan, it is so difficult. I had to, I think, without knowing, develop a new personality. I became a joker of a class just to try to fit in, because I didn't know English. So I think I'm so grateful for it because it builds an unbelievable resilience and it helps me have a really different perspective. Maybe that's why I'm here telling these kind of stories, and that's why I resonate so much with you and with your mission, and I want more people to be through thinking about it and doing anything in their career for it. Because it was difficult, and I know for me, maybe I came out on the better end through that trauma. Some others may struggle to fit in. But it probably helped that I went to a public school that was full of different heritage and cultures, and none of them had an erased voice, and they were all kind of proud. Maybe they had great parents and the school was good. I developed a new personality. That younger 15-year-old Mustafa that was younger was a completely different person to who I am now. Just speaking with you, I think it's accepting the fact that it's normal. People had legs all the time. It's not a new thing. And cultures have always been mixed, and you are who you are, and there's no other person like you and like yourself. But it's, I guess, hard to really digest that. Like it's the concept is understandable to me, but I have to sleep on it. It is. But thank you that
Thank you.
you made me think deeply about it. Am I gonna make it to your 7th group member? Maybe in the next book. What's the title of the next book?
I don't know. I just published this one. Let a Woman Rest. Give me like 6 months.
Okay, no, you need to recover. Thank you, Zozan. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it.